The Creek tribe, one of the largest and most powerful indigenous groups in the southeastern United States, faced dramatic changes when European colonization began to encroach upon their ancestral lands. Situated in what is now Georgia, Alabama, Florida, and Mississippi, the Creek people lived in a society that was sophisticated and organized, with a rich cultural heritage rooted in agriculture, hunting, and a complex political system. They had long-standing traditions of communal living and governance, often organized into clan systems and councils that made decisions for the entire tribe. These systems were deeply connected to the land, the rivers, and the seasons, reflecting the tribe's respect for balance and sustainability. However, this balance was severely disrupted with the arrival of European explorers in the early 16th century. The first major impact of European colonization came with the introduction of new diseases. Smallpox, measles, and other European illnesses devastated native populations, decimating entire communities. The Creek tribe, like many others, faced a rapid decline in their numbers, which weakened their social structure and strained their ability to defend their lands. This was compounded by the European settlers' increasing demand for land and resources, as well as their hunger for power over the growing colonies. Despite the challenges posed by disease and territorial encroachment, the Creek initially attempted to maintain peaceful relations with the European settlers. They engaged in trade, exchanging valuable goods like furs, deer skins, and other natural resources for European firearms, metal tools, and other goods. These trade relations became essential for the Creek, as they saw the value in acquiring advanced weaponry to protect their lands from competing tribes and European invaders. However, the benefits of trade also came at a cost. The Creek began to integrate European goods into their daily lives, which affected their traditional ways of living. The introduction of European goods, such as cotton and woven textiles, led some Creek leaders to explore ways of adopting certain aspects of European culture. Despite these exchanges, tensions between the Creek and European settlers remained. As more settlers arrived, they pushed further into Creek lands, establishing farms, towns, and plantations. The U.S. government, which had taken control after the Revolutionary War, sought to expand its territory further into the southeastern United States, and this led to a series of treaties that were designed to undermine Native American sovereignty. The U.S. government began to apply diplomatic pressure on the Creek to sign agreements that ceded large amounts of their land. For the Creek, these treaties often involved forced negotiations, or were signed under duress, leaving the tribe with less and less of their ancestral land. The Creek also found themselves caught between competing European powers, primarily the British and the Spanish. The British and Spanish had long had interests in the region, and both sought alliances with the Creek to bolster their own power against one another. The Creek, like many Native American tribes, played a crucial role in the geopolitics of the colonial era, using diplomacy and warfare to ensure their survival. However, these alliances were often short-lived, and the Creek found themselves in a precarious position as both European powers vied for control of their land. The arrival of settlers in the early 1800s brought with it a new sense of urgency for the Creek tribe. By now, European settlers had established more permanent settlements, and the U.S. government, under President Thomas Jefferson, began to push for the removal of all Native American tribes from their lands. This policy, which became known as Indian removal, sought to relocate Native American tribes to the Western Territories in exchange for their ancestral land. Many Creek leaders, like those of other tribes, saw this as a direct threat to their way of life. The U.S. government's policies were rooted in the belief that Native American tribes were obstacles to American progress and expansion. As the Creek tribe entered the 19th century, they faced increasing pressure to adapt or be removed. The experience of European colonization had forever changed their world, and the tribe found itself at a crossroads. Some leaders, recognizing the growing power of the U.S. government and European settlers, began to explore the possibility of assimilation. They believed that cooperating with the Americans and adopting certain European customs would ensure the tribe's survival. These leaders saw diplomacy as a way to protect the Creek people from further encroachment and to secure their rights in a rapidly changing world. However, not all Creek leaders were willing to abandon their traditional ways of life. A growing movement of resistance within the tribe rejected the idea of assimilation, fearing that it would lead to the destruction of their culture and way of life. These leaders argued that the only way to preserve Creek sovereignty was to resist the U.S. government and defend their land. This split within the Creek tribe would grow more pronounced in the coming years, leading to internal conflict and setting the stage for the violent events that would follow. The tensions between cooperation and resistance laid the foundation for the Creek War, a conflict that would ultimately shape the future of the tribe and its place in the broader history of Native American resistance. Thus, the early interactions with European settlers and the subsequent pressure from the U.S. government set in motion a series of events that divided the Creek people, pitting those who sought to adapt and those who wished to preserve their traditions against each other. These early conflicts created the divisions that would echo through the tribe's history, ultimately leading to their forced removal from their ancestral land. The Creek tribe's encounter with European colonization was not just a battle over land, but a battle for identity, survival, and cultural preservation. The Creek War, 1813-1814, also known as the Red Stick War, was a pivotal moment in the history of the Creek tribe, marked by internal divisions and external pressures that would forever change the trajectory of the tribe's future. The conflict, which stemmed from both long-standing tensions within the tribe and the broader geopolitical pressures of the time, exposed the fractures within the Creek nation as it grappled with its identity and its response to the encroaching American government. The Creek War was born out of deep internal divisions within the Creek tribe. On one side were the Red Sticks, a faction of traditionalists who opposed the encroachment of European American customs and the weakening of Creek culture. The Red Sticks, who were mainly young warriors, sought to preserve the tribe's ancient ways and believed that the Creek people should resist both the pressure to assimilate and the influence of outside force. They were also deeply influenced by the teachings of Tecumseh, a Shawnee leader who had called for a pan-tribal alliance against American expansion. His vision inspired many Creek leaders to view the American presence as an existential threat to their way of life. The Red Sticks viewed the increasing influence of the White Sticks, the faction of Creek leaders who were willing to adopt aspects of European American culture, as a betrayal of their ancestral traditions. The White Sticks, including figures like the influential Creek leader William McIntosh, were seen as collaborators with the American government. They were in favor of peace treaties and negotiating with the U.S., often accepting land cessions in exchange for military protection. Many White Stick leaders sought to avoid violent confrontation with the United States, believing that a pragmatic approach, including adopting some European customs, was the best way to ensure the survival of the tribe. The conflict within the tribe escalated when the Red Sticks, led by leaders such as Chief Nemethla and others, began attacking American settlers and Creek villages that had aligned with the White Sticks. The violence spread quickly, with a series of skirmishes erupting across Creek territory. The American government, led by President James Madison and his Secretary of War, John C. Calhoun, viewed the Creek uprising as a direct challenge to American authority and a threat to the settlers pouring into Georgia and Alabama. In response to the growing threat from the Red Sticks, the U.S. government decided to intervene militarily, General Andrew Jackson, a rising figure in American politics and military leadership, was tasked with putting down Creek resistance. Jackson, a former soldier known for his ruthless tactics, led a series of punitive expeditions into Creek territory. His forces, composed of American regulars, militia units, and allied Cherokee and Lower Creek warriors, began to systematically dismantle the Red Stick resistance. The U.S. Army's tactics were brutal. The most infamous event of the war was the Battle of Horseshoe Bend in 1814, where Jackson's forces decisively defeated the Red Stick warriors. The battle resulted in the death of over 800 Creek men, women, and children. The defeat at Horseshoe Bend was a crushing blow to the Red Stick movement, but it did not end the war entirely. The survivors of the Red Stick faction were forced to retreat into the swamps and forests, continuing their resistance from more isolated locations. The Creek War formally ended with the Treaty of Fort Jackson, signed in 1814, which forced the Creek Nation to cede an enormous portion of their land to the United States. Approximately 23 million acres, roughly half of the Creek territory, was surrendered under the terms of the treaty. This loss was devastating for the Creek people, as it represented not only a loss of land, but also a profound blow to their sovereignty and cultural identity. The treaty's terms were a direct result of the U.S. government's insistence on punishing the Creek for their resistance, and were seen as an example of the broader policy of forced removal that would become all too common in the decades that followed. But the aftermath of the Creek War was not just a matter of land cessions. The internal divisions that had led to the conflict did not dissipate with the signing of the treaty. The White Stick faction, which had aligned itself with the U.S. government during the war, faced a backlash from their fellow Creeks, who viewed them as traitors. William McIntosh, a prominent White Stick leader, was particularly targeted. His role in negotiating peace with the U.S. and his acceptance of land cessions made him a figure of intense resentment among the Red Stick and other traditionalists. In 1818, McIntosh was assassinated by Creek warriors, symbolizing the deep and unresolved divisions within the tribe. The Creek War and the subsequent Treaty of Fort Jackson not only marked the end of the Creek resistance to U.S. expansion, but also cemented the cultural and political rifts within the tribe. The divisions between the Red Sticks and the White Sticks would continue to play out in the years that followed. The Red Sticks, though defeated, never fully gave up their belief in resisting the encroachment of American power. Meanwhile, the White Sticks, having made peace with the U.S., became increasingly aligned with the federal government, leading to their integration into the broader political system of the United States. The Creek Nation's internal divisions would have lasting effects, influencing the tribe's fate during the era of Indian removal and beyond. While the Red Stick faction's dream of preserving traditional Creek society was ultimately crushed by U.S. military force, their resistance became a symbol of indigenous pride and resilience. The White Stick faction, in contrast, would play a more cooperative role in the years to come, often finding themselves in a position where they had to balance the pressures of their own people with the demands of the U.S. government. The Creek War thus not only reshaped the tribe's territorial boundaries, but also fundamentally altered the tribe's political and cultural dynamics. The legacy of this internal conflict would echo through the generations, culminating in the forced relocation of the Creek people during the Trail of Tears. As the Creek tribe navigated the fraught terrain of survival, resistance, and assimilation, the war served as a bitter reminder of the cost of division, betrayal, and the struggle to preserve identity in a world that seemed determined to erase it. The internal divisions caused by the Creek War were far from resolved by the signing of the Treaty of Fort Jackson in 1814. While the treaty brought an official end to the armed conflict, it had profound and lasting effects on the Creek people. both culturally and politically. The harsh terms of the treaty, combined with the lasting bitterness between the Red Sticks and White Sticks, led to the further fragmentation of the Creek tribe. The aftermath of the war and the treaty's enforcement resulted in profound changes to the tribe's structure, alliances, and their relationship with the U.S. government. This fragmentation ultimately paved the way for the forced removal of the Creek Nation during the Trail of Tears in the 1830s. The Treaty of Fort Jackson was a devastating blow to the Creek Nation, as it resulted in the cession of approximately 23 million acres of land, nearly half of the tribe's ancestral territory. This loss was not merely a matter of land. It symbolized the beginning of the erosion of the Creek Nation's sovereignty. The treaty's terms, dictated by the victorious U.S. forces, represented a brutal assertion of American power over the Native American tribes of the Southeast. The Creek people were forced to surrender vast swaths of land that were essential to their way of life, including their hunting grounds, agricultural lands, and sacred sites. While the Treaty of Fort Jackson was initially a peace settlement, it also deepened the divisions within the Creek people. The White Stick faction, which had cooperated with the U.S. government during the war, emerged as the tribe's primary political force. But this did little to mend the wounds caused by the internal conflict. The Red Sticks, who had fought in resistance to the U.S. government, and whose cultural identity had been largely based on rejection of European American influence, found themselves marginalized. The White Sticks, in contrast, gained greater political leverage, having secured U.S. favor. But this alliance came at the cost of further alienating their traditionalist counterparts. For many traditionalists, the Treaty of Fort Jackson represented a betrayal of their ancestors and culture. The Red Sticks, though defeated, remained deeply opposed to the influence of the United States, and the treaty's enforcement felt like a stark reminder of their loss. Even after the war, many Red Stick leaders and warriors continued to resist the cultural erosion caused by the treaty's terms, which had allowed for the establishment of white settlements on once Creek land. Perhaps the most dramatic illustration of the ongoing division within the Creek tribe after the war was the assassination of William McIntosh, the influential White Stick leader, in 1880. McIntosh had been a prominent figure in the negotiation of the Treaty of Fort Jackson, and his support of the U.S. government made him a target for those who viewed him as a traitor to the Creek cause. McIntosh's assassination by Creek warriors is a poignant example of the intense internal strife that gripped the Creek Nation in the aftermath of the Creek War. McIntosh had long been seen by the Red Stick faction as a symbol of betrayal. His willingness to work with the U.S. government and accept land cessions left him deeply unpopular among those who wished to preserve Creek independence and resist American expansion. His death at the hands of his own people marked the tragic culmination of the divisions between the Creek factions and underscored the deep emotional and political scars that the Creek War had left behind. The assassination of McIntosh further deepened the political rifts within the tribe and exemplified the fierce loyalty that both factions felt toward their respective visions of Creek survival. The White Sticks, having lost their leader, found themselves increasingly vulnerable to attacks from traditionalist Creek warriors, while the Red Stick leaders, although avenging the perceived betrayal, were left to contend with the loss of their most powerful resistance to the U.S. government. The repercussions of McIntosh's death reverberated through Creek society for years, fueling a sense of distrust and division that would remain a defining feature of Creek politics for decades to come. As the Creek people dealt with the fragmentation of their own society, the U.S. government began to assert greater influence over their affairs. Following the Creek War and the Treaty of Fort Jackson, the U.S. government continued to push for the further disintegration of the Creek Nation's territory. The White Stick faction, despite internal opposition, increasingly aligned itself with the U.S. government, seeing this as the only viable option for Creek survival in the face of growing white encroachment. The increasing cooperation between the white stick leaders and the United States was viewed by traditionalists as an act of submission. These leaders, such as William McIntosh's successor, Major Ridge, and his son, John Ridge, would later become key figures in the development of the controversial Treaty of New Echota in 1835, which ultimately led to the forced removal of the Creek people to Indian Territory. This treaty, negotiated with the U.S. government, was signed by a minority faction of Creek leaders, most notably the White Stick faction, but was opposed by a significant portion of the tribe. The treaty's ratification and the forced removal that followed would cause further division within the Creek Nation. By the time the Indian Removal Act was passed in 1830, internal divisions within the Creek tribe had reached a breaking point. The White Stick faction, which had cooperated with the U.S. government throughout the years, supported the forced removal policy, while the Red Stick and traditionalist groups remained vehemently opposed to relocation. The brutal reality of the forced relocation, often referred to as the Trail of Tears, claimed the lives of thousands of Creek people as they were forcibly moved from their homelands to what is now Oklahoma. The legacy of the Creek War and the internal divisions that arose from it would continue to shape the tribe's future. The fragmentation of the tribe and the resulting political tensions would echo throughout the years of removal and the long-term effects of the U.S. government's policy of forced assimilation. While the Creek Nation would eventually reunite in Indian Territory, the scars of these internal divisions would remain, serving as a powerful reminder of the complex relationship between resistance, betrayal, and survival. The story of the Creek people's fragmentation after the Creek War serves as an enduring testament to the profound impact of internal conflict on Native American communities and their ability to maintain cultural identity in the face of overwhelming external pressures. The deep divisions within the Creek Nation following the Creek War and the forced removal to Indian Territory had far-reaching consequences that persisted long after the events of the 1810s and 1830s. The rupture caused by the political and military conflicts, particularly the betrayal felt by the Red Stick faction and the violent fallout of events like William McIntosh's assassination, set the stage for a fractured Creek identity. These internal divisions and their aftermath not only shaped the political landscape of the Creek Nation, but also influenced how the tribe navigated the challenges of survival in a new, often hostile environment in the years that followed. After the forced relocation to Indian Territory, present-day Oklahoma, the Creek Nation was scattered across a new land where they had to rebuild from scratch. The fragmentation caused by the Creek War and the events surrounding it, however, did not fade easily. Even in their new homeland, the Creek people faced tensions between the factions that had supported or opposed cooperation with the U.S. government. The internal rifts within the Creek Nation were not healed immediately. Many of the tribal members who had been forcibly removed, particularly the traditionalist groups, continued to harbor animosity toward the White Stick leaders who had been perceived as traitors. The continuing debate over how best to preserve their culture in a rapidly changing world, the tension between maintaining autonomy and aligning with the U.S. government, remained unresolved. The presence of a younger generation born in Indian Territory added a new layer of complexity, as these individuals faced the challenge of reconciling their tribe's history with the modern reality of their world. The long-term impact of the earlier divisions became an enduring struggle for cohesion within the tribe. While some leaders sought to restore unity by focusing on rebuilding the Creek Nation's cultural and political systems, others worked to create alliances with the U.S. government in hopes of ensuring their people's survival and prosperity. This resulted in a combination of traditional Creek values and the increasingly dominant influence of American-style governance. This process of assimilation, however, was not seamless and continued to create friction within the community. As a result, the Creek people were forced to balance a delicate mix of traditionalism and adaptation in order to survive as a cohesive group. In the years following the forced removal, the Creek Nation, like many other Native American tribes, faced an uphill battle to preserve their cultural identity. The policies of the U.S. government were designed to erase Native traditions and force assimilation, a process that was exacerbated by the internal divisions within the Creek people. The government sought to impose Western education, Christianity, and a more European-style political structure, all of which threatened the traditional way of life. For the Creek, one of the most significant challenges was maintaining their language and cultural practices. The traditionalists, who had long resisted American influence, fought to preserve the old ways, including their language, religious ceremonies, and social systems. They viewed these practices as essential to maintaining their identity and unity. On the other hand, those who had collaborated with the U.S. government often favored adopting new customs in an effort to gain greater political and economic stability. This rift within the tribe created a generation of mixed attitudes toward their cultural legacy. Language loss, in particular, became a major concern for the Creek people as they grappled with their new reality. For those who were in favor of assimilation, speaking English or adopting American customs was seen as a necessary means of survival and progress. However, the traditionalists recognized the importance of their native language as not only a tool for communication, but also a spiritual and cultural connector to their ancestors. Efforts to revive and preserve the Creek language became a central concern for later generations, as they sought to reclaim their cultural heritage. Another significant legacy of the Creek War and the subsequent internal divisions was the ongoing battle for political sovereignty. While the Creek Nation did not regain the same political power they once held, many leaders continued to fight for the rights of their people. As the U.S. government continued its policy of forced assimilation, the Creek people's ability to govern themselves was severely limited. In the aftermath of the removal, the Creek Nation's governance system became increasingly complicated. Leaders like Major Ridge and John Ridge, who had previously sought cooperation with the U.S. government, began to advocate for an approach that combined both traditional Creek leadership structures and an adaptation to American-style governance. This approach, though pragmatic, was not without its critics. Many members of the Creek community still harbored a deep mistrust of the federal government, and the internal division surrounding leadership and political structure became more pronounced. The federal government's treatment of Native American tribes during the late 19th and early 20th centuries, which included policies designed to dismantle tribal governance systems, created additional challenges for the Creek Nation. Despite the setbacks, the tribe's ongoing struggle for political autonomy continued to shape their trajectory. Over the years, the Creek people worked to rebuild their nation's government and assert their sovereignty through various means, including legal battles, political activism, and the establishment of cultural organizations. Today, the story of the Creek Nation's internal divisions and their battle for cultural survival remains a key part of the tribe's history. The legacy of betrayal, internal conflict, and the fragmentation caused by the Creek War is still felt by many Creek descendants. While the trauma of these events has been passed down through generations, so too has the resilience and determination to preserve their identity and community. The Creek people's ability to endure, adapt, and rebuild from the fractured aftermath of the Creek War is a testament to their strength and cultural continuity. The lessons learned from the Creek's internal divisions during the 19th century have had a lasting impact on how the tribe addresses modern challenges. Their struggles with the federal government, the forced removal, and the internal conflict between factions have informed the tribe's current efforts to maintain cultural practices, preserve their language, and assert their sovereignty in it. Contemporary society. The Creek people's ongoing resilience in the face of adversity continues to inspire and shape their path forward as they move toward a future that honors both their history and their vision for a unified community. In conclusion, the legacy of internal division within the Creek Nation serves as a powerful reminder of the profound impact of internal conflict on the survival and cohesion of Native American tribes. The Creek people's ability to navigate these challenges and rebuild their cultural identity offers hope and insight into the complex process of healing and unity within a community fractured by historical events. The Creek Nation's ongoing story is one of perseverance, cultural survival, and the relentless pursuit of sovereignty, an enduring testament to the strength and resilience of the Native American spirit. In the years since their forced relocation to Indian Territory, the Creek Nation has experienced multiple phases of rebuilding and recovery. The divisions caused by the Creek War, the betrayal of key leaders, and the trauma of the removal continue to reverberate in the community today. However, the contemporary Creek Nation is not defined solely by its past conflicts and division. Instead, it is a nation in the process of reconciling with its history, restoring its traditions, and healing generational wounds, while navigating the complexities of modern-day life. In recent decades, the Creek Nation has placed a significant emphasis on cultural reclamation and revitalization, seeking to reconnect with the traditions and practices that were nearly lost during the traumatic periods of forced removal, internal division, and assimilation. Language preservation has become one of the central goals for the modern Creek Nation, as the younger generation has taken steps to revive and teach the Creek language. Educational programs and language immersion schools have been established to ensure that the rich linguistic heritage of the tribe is not erased. These efforts are vital for maintaining the identity of the tribe and for instilling a sense of pride in Creek culture among the youth. Additionally, the Creek Nation has undertaken extensive efforts to restore traditional practices, such as ceremonial dances, festivals, and other community activities that were once suppressed or nearly lost due to forced assimilation and internally divisions. By reconnecting with these cultural practices, the tribe has strengthened its sense of unity, reminding all members of the importance of their shared history and heritage. The inclusion of traditional practices in everyday life has fostered a renewed sense of collective identity and belonging. Whether it is through the resurgence of Creek storytelling, the preservation of sacred ceremonies, or the continuation of traditional arts and crafts, these cultural reclamation efforts represent the tribe's commitment to honoring its past while building a future grounded in tradition. In addition to cultural revival, the Creek Nation has also made significant strides in the area of political sovereignty and self-governance. The lessons learned from the internal political struggles of the 19th century, particularly the debates over leadership, tribal unity, and the balance between external influence and tribal autonomy, have informed the current political landscape of the tribe. Today, the Creek Nation is one of the largest Native American tribes in the United States, and it has a robust government structure with elected officials who represent the interests of their people. The Creek Nation's ability to navigate the political system of both the state and federal governments is a testament to the tribe's resilience. They have fought legal battles to reclaim land, protect their rights, and assert their sovereignty. The fight for land rights, in particular, continues to be a major point of contention, as the tribe works to protect its ancestral lands from encroachment and ensure that their territory is governed in accordance with their values. The federal recognition of the Creek Nation and their ability to establish programs to support their citizens, such as healthcare, education, and economic development initiatives, has further empowered the tribe to reclaim its autonomy and build a sustainable future. However, even as the tribe gains political strength, the scars of past divisions and betrayals still remain a part of the tribe's collective memory. Despite these successes, the Creek Nation's journey toward healing is far from over. The internal divisions that arose from the Creek War and the forced removal continue to present challenges for the tribe. For some, the wounds caused by past betrayals, such as the assassination of William McIntosh, have not healed completely. These events continue to shape the way some members view their fellow Creek people, particularly those who aligned with or supported the U.S. government. Furthermore, modern conflicts within the tribe are often reflective of the same tensions that existed in the 19th century. The balancing act between traditional values and the pressures of modern society. As younger generations grow up in an increasingly globalized world, there are concerns that they may not fully appreciate the significance of their cultural heritage. Some members of the tribe may feel that traditional practices are outdated or irrelevant in today's context, while others argue that the survival of the Creek Nation depends on maintaining a deep connection to its roots. In light of these challenges, the Creek Nation is focusing on fostering a dialogue within the community that encourages reconciliation and understanding. Efforts to bridge the gap between different factions of the tribe, those who support traditionalism and those who embrace modernity, are essential for building a unified future. Healing from the divisions of the past will require acknowledging the pain and trauma that these historical events caused, while also recognizing the strength and resilience that the tribe demonstrated in surviving those tumultuous times. The Creek Nation's journey of recovery and reconciliation is part of a broader movement within Native American communities to reclaim their heritage, assert their sovereignty, and define their place in the modern world. As one of the largest and most influential Native American tribes, the Creek Nation plays a vital role in shaping the future of Native American rights and culture. Their experiences with internal conflict, forced removal, and the challenge of preserving traditions in the face of external pressures provide valuable lessons for other tribes that are grappling with similar issues. Through its continued efforts to revive its culture, assert its sovereignty, and heal from past divisions, the Creek Nation exemplifies the resilience and determination of Native American communities across the country. The struggle for unity, cultural preservation, and political autonomy is ongoing, but the Creek Nation's commitment to healing and building a future rooted in its traditions stands as a powerful testament to the strength and enduring spirit of the Creek people. The future of the Creek Nation lies in its ability to reconcile its past with its present and to build a united community that honors the values of tradition while embracing the challenges of the modern world. By focusing on healing past wounds, maintaining cultural practices, and asserting political sovereignty, the Creek Nation is paving the way for a brighter future for its people. The journey toward a unified Creek Nation is not without its challenges, but the resilience of the Creek people, born from their history of survival, struggle, and triumph, will continue to guide them forward. As they strive to preserve their culture and assert their sovereignty, the Creek Nation remains a beacon of hope and inspiration for Native American communities everywhere, demonstrating that even the deepest divisions can be healed through commitment, understanding, and shared determination. As the Creek Nation moves forward, its history of division, resistance, and survival serves as both a cautionary tale and a testament to the strength of the Creek people. The internal struggles faced by the tribe, stemming from betrayal, forced removal, and the difficult choices made in the face of external pressures, have left deep scars. But they have also forged a community that is resilient, adaptable, and fiercely proud of its heritage. The Creek Nation's story is not just one of overcoming hardship, but also one of unwavering determination to preserve its culture and assert its rightful place within the broader fabric of American society. For the Creek Nation, unity is paramount to its survival and success. The healing process, while necessary, requires a collective effort from all members of the tribe. It is through shared responsibility and mutual understanding that the Creek people can overcome the divisions that have plagued them for centuries. This unity is not simply about cultural preservation. It is about the survival of the tribe itself. The younger generation, who are increasingly exposed to global influences and pressures, must play a pivotal role in this process. While modernity presents its own set of challenges, the younger Creek people possess the unique opportunity to bridge the gap between tradition and innovation. One of the most significant aspects of the tribe's future will be how the younger generation approaches the responsibility of cultural preservation. The youth have the opportunity to redefine what it means to be Creek, blending tradition with the demands of the contemporary world. This balancing act is not easy, and the choices they make will determine whether the Creek Nation can sustain its cultural practices while embracing new ways of life. The tribe's leaders and elders must play an active role in guiding the younger generation, providing them with the tools and knowledge to navigate this complex task. The key to success lies in maintaining respect for tradition while also adapting to the evolving world. Alongside cultural preservation, the political sovereignty of the Creek Nation remains a core pillar of the tribe's identity. The Creek Nation's resilience in asserting its sovereignty has been crucial in its recovery from past wounds. The tribe's ability to regain recognition and assert control over its lands and resources has been a significant victory, but the work is far from over. The Creek people must continue to fight for their rights, advocating for policies and initiatives that will ensure their future autonomy and prosperity. Today, the Creek Nation has not only regained its land, but also its voice in the political sphere. With a strong government structure in place, the tribe can navigate the challenges of modern governance while maintaining a focus on its cultural values. The fight for sovereignty extends beyond political boundaries. It is also a fight for self-determination, the right to govern according to the will of the people, and the preservation of the tribe's way of life. As the Creek Nation continues to assert its place in the modern world, it is crucial that they retain the power to make decisions that are reflective of their values, culture, and priorities. Looking toward the future, the Creek Nation must balance its rich history with the realities of the 21st century. As the tribe navigates the complexities of modern life, it faces the challenge of remaining true to its ancestral traditions while engaging with the broader world. The path forward lies in the successful integration of tradition and innovation. The tribe must continue to celebrate its cultural heritage, ensuring that its traditions, language, and values are passed down to future generations. At the same time, the Creek Nation must embrace new opportunities for economic development, education, and social progress that align with its core principles. The success of the Creek Nation will depend on its ability to adapt without losing sight of the values that have sustained it for centuries. Whether through the expansion of education programs, the preservation of the environment, or the development of sustainable economic opportunities, the tribe must chart a course that honors its past while looking to the future. The Creek nation's strength lies not only in its history of survival, but in its ability to evolve and thrive in an ever-changing world. The Creek nation's journey is far from over, but it is a journey rooted in resilience, hope, and the unwavering spirit of its people. The tribe's ability to overcome the challenges of internal division, forced removal, and cultural assimilation has been a testament to the strength of the Creek people. As they continue to heal from the wounds of the past, the Creek nation stands as a symbol of perseverance, unity, and the enduring power of cultural identity. In the face of adversity, the Creek people have maintained their commitment to preserving their heritage, asserting their sovereignty, and building a future that reflects their values and vision. The lessons learned from their history will continue to guide them as they navigate the complexities of the modern world. By honoring their traditions and embracing the possibilities of the future, the Creek nation can ensure that its legacy remains strong for generations to come. Ultimately, the future of the Creek nation lies in the hands of its people. By working together, bridging the gap between generations, and staying true to the values that have sustained them, the Creek people can build a united and prosperous nation. The struggles of the past have shaped who they are today, but it is their strength, resilience, and commitment to their culture that will determine their future.